Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have a mid-February wrap-up. So mid-month wrap-ups I don't do very often because I don't often read a lot at the beginning of the month. It's really strange. Like it gets to like the third or fourth week of the month and I have a mad panic and just read everything. However, as you guys may know if you have seen my Bookopoly TBR and my contemporary-a-thon TBR, I have a pretty extensive list of books that I need to read this month, and so I have been reading like the wind and I have finished quite a few. Now if you are familiar with any of my wrap-ups, you know that they can get quite long, and with me anticipating reading 10 books this month, I thought it may be a good idea for me to do a mid-month wrap-up and talk about the first 5 books I read in February. Now unlike my end of month wrap-ups, this video will not have any stats in. My end of month wrap-up will have all of the pages that I've read, what genres they were, the demographic breakdown, etc. With that being said, we will go straight into it, and the first book that I finished in February was Forever by Maggie Stiefvater. Now this is a paranormal romance story that follows werewolves, and this is the 3rd book in the Wolves of Mercy Falls series. Now you may have heard me saying that I didn't really like this series and that the first 2 books were okay and I wasn't really into it and I didn't think it was memorable and I was just reading it to wrap up the series, but I have to eat my words, guys, because I really enjoyed this and I gave it 4 stars. Now these books are very character driven, so there is not a whole lot of plot. Essentially the entire story that spans the trilogy is that we are following a girl called Grace who is bitten when she is young, but for some reason she does not turn into a werewolf, yet she has an obsession with the wolves that live in the woods, and there's one wolf in particular that she's really into. So it is essentially all about werewolfism and whether people want to be wolves, whether they can find a cure. This is the only series that I have read by Maggie Stiefvater, so I did not know what to expect when I was going into it, but what I can say is that the writing in this is absolutely beautiful and it's very atmospheric. I enjoyed this last book in the series a lot more than I expected to, and I just find this entire series just a really calming, atmospheric read. There's just something about the books and the audiobooks as well that I just find extremely soothing, and I was just captivated by this last book. I loved the writing style, I loved a lot of the characters, and I just fell in love with this last book, and I don't know why, because I wasn't that into the first 2. So if you do like Maggie Stiefvater and you do like character driven books, I would recommend this just because just being in this world is nice and I really enjoyed it. Then I finally finished Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. As you guys may know, I am hosting a read along for the entire A Song of Ice and Fire series, and when I say entire I mean the ones that are published, because we all know Winds of Winter probably isn't coming anytime soon. So as you guys probably know, Game of Thrones is a epic fantasy series that follows many different characters in this world, where the Hand of the King, who is sort of the guy that actually does the work of the king while the king is just like the figurehead, he suddenly dies. Our sort of most prominent character, Ned Stark, who is best friends with the king, is offered to take that role. However, we find out that maybe the king didn't die naturally or of an illness, as it seemed that he did, and Ned slowly starts to unravel the reasons why the Hand of the King died and what that will mean for not only the country but his family. So I have seen the show, I'm up to date on the show. A lot of people really asked me to host this read along, so I was like, you know what, I really want to read Game of Thrones, I'll do it. And I thought that there was a very good chance that I wouldn't like these. This is the first like really big adult epic fantasy that I have read. With me being familiar with the show, there was a very big chance that I would not be that into this, but I can say, guys, I absolutely loved it. I gave this 5 stars. There are 101 tabs in here. It is, there we go, you can see them now, it is excessive, but I thought this to be incredibly well written. And George R.R. Martin has a very strange writing style in that he's not very flowery, yet he is still very descriptive, and he has a very like plain statement style way of writing, while at the same time making you feel emotion, like describing beautiful things, and it just blew my mind, honestly. One of the things that I really loved about this book was all the Easter egg hunting. There are quite a few things I've tabbed in here that are foreshadowing, and it just shows how well this world is woven together, because not only are there hints to things that come later in the book, there are also hints to things that have only just been revealed in the TV show, which I believe George R.R. Martin does work on, so like you can kind of treat the show as canon. A very interesting thing that I found about George's writing style is that He's a very impartial narrator, so he will describe the most despicable acts by characters that you kind of like, and he does not try and sway you one way or another whether you would like to believe that it is a good thing or a bad thing. You kind of have to judge them and make up your own mind, which I found to be a really interesting standpoint from an author. And so you will see your favourite characters just murdering and butchering and raping people, and you have to decide whether you're going to forgive them for that or not, while also condemning other people for doing pretty much the same things. So I thought this was very interesting. I absolutely loved it. I love the Easter egg hunting. I love all the extra detail and depth that you don't get from the show, and I really am excited to carry on with this series. If you are following this read along and you are waiting for the live show, I have announced it on the Twitter. It is, I believe, the 3rd of March, which is a Sunday at 8 PM GMT, which I think is about 3 PM EST, but you'll have to check the time zones on that because I'm not quite sure, but I think my time, which is UK GMT, it's about 8 PM. So I hope to see you guys there, and please let me know if you will be joining us to discuss this book, because I know a lot of you guys have been having a lot of fun with it and really enjoying it, and I'm so glad that I did as well. Then the contemporary-a-thon started, and I read Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring-Blake, which fulfilled about 4 contemporary-a-thon challenges and was also on my Bookopoly TBR to read a contemporary or a romance. Which reminds me that I did not tell you that Forever by Maggie Stiefvater was for the Bookopoly challenge to read a magical realism or a paranormal book. So Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring-Blake is a hard-hitting contemporary that follows a main character whose best friend accuses the main character's brother of raping her one night after a party, or at a party. As you can imagine, having somebody very close to you accused of rape is very difficult, especially when the person that is accusing your brother is one of your best friends. I definitely thought that this book would have an interesting standpoint coming from somebody in the middle, but what I did not expect from this book was to feel as torn as the main character does. I like her brother. I like him. I don't necessarily think that he is a horrible person. I think that he is somebody who, you know, gets carried away with alcohol and being like an alpha male and like a rowdy boy type of character, and made a very, very grave mistake. It's so nuanced and it's so complicated, and I did not expect to care as much as I did when I was reading this book. Like I said, I liked her brother even though he raped a girl, and I liked her best friend. I liked the elements of feminism in here, even though feminism in books is not something that I really love when it's like a core theme and it feels like a little bit preachy, but in this it absolutely didn't, and I really enjoyed that aspect. This book was very diverse. It features somebody who is struggling with their gender. It features a bisexual girl. It features, I think, a lesbian. There is a Korean American character in here. There are characters dealing with the after effects and the mental impacts of abuse, and I just thought that this book was so well done and so hard hitting and just so emotional. I loved it so much, and you guys know it is not often that I give a contemporary a full 5 stars, but this was a full 5 stars. I really loved it. I would recommend that a lot of people read it. It was just so beautiful. It was beautifully written. It was emotional. There were passages that were very difficult to read. The characters were unique and 3-dimensional and just wonderful to read about and read from the perspective of, and I would highly recommend this for anybody looking for a contemporary, especially if you are like me and don't often read contemporary, so you like the more substantial ones. I then finished a sci-fi book, and that was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This was my Bookopoly book for the challenge to read a 5-star prediction. I gave this one 5 stars as well. It's been a very good month so far. So The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet is a very character-driven book again. I will give you kind of a synopsis because I feel like people don't often give a synopsis for this. They just say it's character-driven. But this follows a crew aboard a tunneling ship called the Wayfarer, and being a tunneling ship means that they essentially punch holes in space to create tunnels so that other people can travel through space faster instead of like going the long way around. So they, you know, they get by. They do jobs, they get paid. The problem is that their ship isn't really equipped to deal with like really big punches for cargo movement and things like that. In the universe, there is a sort of governing body of space called the Galactic Commons, and they have started to allow a more volatile tribe of like alien species into the Galactic Commons, and this species has pretty much kept to itself before, and they need a tunnel built so that they can start building trade routes and actually give access to this new place. And essentially the wayfarer is equipped for this job, but the planet is a very long way away. It's going to take them a year to get to. And this book chronicles the long way to a small angry planet. Now that is essentially all of the plot that I've told you. This book takes place across the journey as they stop at ports, as they visit family members, as they build friendships and relationships amongst the crew. And this book touched me in so many ways. I absolutely loved it. I loved all of the characters. I found it to be really emotional. I just felt so deeply connected to the crew of this ship. Now, I have marked this on my spreadsheet as being very diverse and full of representation. However, some of it is metaphorical. For example, there are lots of alien races in this book, but the way that they are treated and the way that conflicts are solved and the species bias and species aggression that some of them may face and the assumptions that people make about different species is very symbolic and relative to how people treat different races in modern day society. I really appreciated that because it can teach you some lessons and impart some wisdom and create metaphors about real life situations that, you know, you maybe weren't quite aware of, but in this beautiful abstract way that doesn't make it feel like you're having messages like rammed down your throat. As well as this, there are also gender fluid aliens, there are polyamorous aliens. Pretty much there's representation all across the board in this. I really loved it. I would highly recommend. Just be aware that it is very character driven and very slow, yet I believe that you will bond with the characters and really love them, and then you won't have a problem with this book. Honestly, this is kind of like a slice of life sci-fi, which is really strange for me to say because obviously science fiction, not really real. If people lived in space, this would be a slice of life. I really hate slice of life, but this was beautiful, emotional, impactful and socially relevant, and I really loved it. And then the final book that I read in February I completed in just one day, and that was A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahara Murphy. This was a contemporary-a-thon book as well, and I read this I think to read a diverse contemporary, and I gave this 4 stars in total. So A Very Large Expanse of Sea follows a girl called Shireen who moves around a lot. She is a Muslim girl, she wears a hijab, and this is set the year after 9/11, so she gets a lot of racially driven hate projected towards her because of the way that she dresses and her religion. This book follows Shireen as she moves to yet another new school and struggles to build friendships when people are just being so hateful and rude. I gave this 4 stars. There are elements that I really loved, but elements that I wasn't quite sure of. I have mentioned in my weekly vlog that will be going up not long after you're seeing this, that to start off with, Shireen is something that I really hate in contemporary books. She's very angry towards people who have done nothing wrong to her, and I understand that hate as she is somebody who is often the subject of a lot of hate. Essentially, even if people are being nice to her, she is like flat out rude, and then that starts to project that she is what they think she is, if you understand what I mean. And that's something that I really hate. I encountered it in another book that I really don't like. However, what this book does that the other book didn't is that you see a progression to her character. She starts to realize her hatred and starts to be a kinder person. She also meets a boy called Ocean, and do not be fooled guys, this is a romance at its core. And while I really loved the romance, okay, the romance in this really made me swoon in parts, and I loved the interactions, and there were just bits that like made me melt. Saying that, it was not realistic. I didn't find Ocean to be a realistic character. They're kind of an on again off again kind of relationship, and there are parts where he's saying that he would do anything for her, and it's like, well, you know, you're only in high school, you've known each other a month, like, you wouldn't do anything. It was all very melodramatic, which is something that I really love. If you guys haven't checked out the things that I like in romance stories, On Again Off Again is one of them, and also the characters that emotionally torture themselves for the good of the love interest is one of them, and both of those things were present in this book. I just didn't find it to be particularly realistic. I'm also not sure that I really like Tahara Murphy's writing style, and I'm not sure that I can put my finger on why. I just didn't really gel with it. I didn't love it too much. There's just something about it in this book especially. I'm not sure what Shatami is like, but in this book there was just something that I didn't quite like. But what I will say is that the messages towards race and Shireen's experience with the things that people have done to her were really hard to read, and it made me really fucking angry reading this book. And obviously it's a work of fiction, but it is based on Tahara Murphy's own experiences as a teenager facing racial hatred after 9/11, and yeah, just some of the things that people do to her. Like, somebody throws food at her, she's been violently attacked, people say things like, are you hiding bombs under your hijab? And it just makes me so angry. Like, I kind of understand people's reaction after 9/11, being scared and wanting to lash out at something that they don't understand, but like, to be so unintelligent as to just tar everybody with the same brush and just attack everybody for no reason, and just to be so blatantly, openly aggressive towards people, especially a young girl who is a teenager, it made me so fucking angry. However, that is a good thing about this book, because that is what it is designed to do. It is designed to make you see other people's experiences. It's racially diverse, and I really like that about it. So it got 4 stars overall, just a couple of niggly bits that I didn't like. However, what I will say about this is that I am not an Own Voices reviewer. I do have a Muslim friend who has read this and said that she didn't think it was a good representation of a Muslim girl's experience. Her review is probably more valid than mine. I gave it 4 stars, but I can't really speak on the representation aspect of this, which is kind of the main point of it. So that is everything I have read in February so far. I think that my end of month wrap up will be going up exactly 2 weeks after this, so keep an eye out for that. I am hoping to read 5 to 6 more books. Need to really knuckle down and get those pages done. But please let me know what you thought of any of these books. Please also don't forget to like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to. If you head into my description box, you'll find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.